So this afternoon we're going to talk about stand establishment as well as maintenance and some of the lessons learned there. Brett's going to talk first about stand establishment and maintenance.
All right, so yes, we're going to talk a little bit about native planting establishment and maintenance here this afternoon, kind of what we do up in Region 4, how we've had success establishing our native plantings, and by no means do we have everything perfect, and there's different ways that you can establish plantings, and I guess some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is probably going to, well, it does completely contradict what Kyle was saying, where plant it and walk away, so I guess here we go. First off, what are we talking about? Early establishment phase. You plant in the spring, fall, just like we had talked earlier. You're talking generally years 1, 2, and 3. Those are those first couple years where we are trying to establish those newly planted seeds and manage those new seedlings that are just starting to pop up through the soil. One thing you can about guarantee you're going to have weed pressure. It's almost a guarantee. It doesn't probably matter where you're at in the state. That probably doesn't matter where you're at in the country. You disturb soil, you plant something, a lot of times you're going to see a lot of that weed pressure come right off that, especially years 1 and 2 for sure, and 3, and a lot of times even beyond that. But just because it's weed pressure doesn't mean that your planting is going to be failing right away, and it also doesn't mean that it's not productive. A lot of times those first few years of a newly established planting are probably your most productive as far as from a wildlife source. Then we're into the maintenance phase. Generally years 4 years and beyond. At this point, your native species are now mature. You've got a lot more flowering plants out there. A lot of your warm season, cool season grasses are mature and starting to show up and kind of start to crowd out some of those earlier weed problems that you might have had. Notice I put in quotations there, should be less weed pressure and more native plants in your planting. It's not always the case. I mean, sometimes some of these plantings might not start looking more like a planting until years 5 or 6 or something. But generally speaking, at year 4, you should start to see more of what you're hoping for, what you're looking for. On the left side here, you can see here, this was what we would kind of call the establishment phase. This is a year 1 grass planting that was planted in the fall of 23. So this would have been the summer of 24. As you can see, there's not a whole lot there by looking at the picture. Some foxtail, a little bit of taller, I believe this was love grass back here on the hilltops, but you're not seeing much for flowering. Obviously this was mowed as well. Look at the picture on the right though, maintenance phase. This is more of a mature planting. You can see more of the flowering plants back here. You see some of these warm season tall bunch grasses, warm season bunch grasses growing here. Generally what we're kind of looking for as far as a native grass planting. Year 1, seedlings will grow just a few inches generally. They're putting all their effort into root development. They're not going to grow super fast. They're trying to establish a good root system to grow for years and years beyond. Plan on usually 2 to 3 mowings. A lot of times this also depends on how much moisture you're going to be getting throughout the summer. Obviously if it's a drier year, probably you might get away with 2 mowings, maybe 1 mowing. Depends on how much stress is going on with the planting. If you've got a substantial amount of moisture, you might have to mow 4 times. It's just one of those things that you kind of got to judge by what Mother Nature gives you. Generally speaking, we're mowing to a height of 6 to 12 inches. The reason we're doing that is we want to give those seedlings a chance to grow, right? If the pressure around there is getting too much and it starts shading these plants out, we might start losing some of these seedlings that are growing in a planting. Mow before weeds get too tall, the smothering effect. Obviously, if we wait for something and it's 4 or 5 foot tall and we decide to go in there and mow it down to 6, 12 inches, we're going to have quite a bit of material laying on top of the things that are growing, going to completely shade out, take away the sunlight, and those seedlings are going to die. Another thing is to mow when it's dry versus it's wet. You get a better cut on what you're cutting, and you don't get stuff to clump up. It spreads out better. And in the end, it's all about sunlight. If plants are getting the sunlight, they're going to grow. So we want to make sure that those new seedlings aren't getting shaded out by competition and give them their best chance to grow, especially here in year one. You can see here, this was same picture. So this is year one. Right here, all this love grass, whatever, you look out here and there's nothing growing here. This is a total failure. And this picture right here on the right is exactly what's in here. I walked out there, and at first that's kind of what I was like. I was like, ew, this isn't good. I wonder if there's anything growing down in there. So I kind of got down on my hands and knees, started pulling some of this foxtail and stuff back, and lo and behold, you can see these little native seedlings that are growing. So we're doing okay. One of the things I like to do when I'm out looking at these grass plantings is kind of the bird's eye view, I guess you would call it. If I can look down and see soil, I know the plants are going to be getting enough sunlight. You know, if I'm walking over top and I look down and I see nothing but leaves, tall vegetation, obviously you know that the sunlight's not getting down through. So you can see plenty of dirt being exposed here, and obviously this is fairly short at this time, and because it was shortly after it was mowed, but you can see that there's plenty of space down here yet for sunlight to reach down to those seedlings. This is one of them. Looking two different plantings here. You know, do we have a problem? Should we mow? You can see the amount of mare's tail out here, but you can it's kind of hard to see, but you can see rows growing in here. Do we have a problem right here? Mare's tail, it's not noxious, right? We don't have to go out there and control it by law. And quite frankly, you know, back here, it looks fairly thick, but it's kind of right in here. These plants down in here where they're planted are still getting plenty of sunlight. And then you look at maybe a later season, if they're getting sunlight and the things are still growing, if we suddenly run out of moisture and it gets hot and dry, these mare's tail plants are actually doing us a favor. They're kind of giving a little bit of shade to those new seedlings that are coming, hopefully retaining a little bit of more moisture in the soil and giving them young seedlings a better chance to flourish. Right here, this is a typical planting, I would say. That first year you see a lot of Canada thistle. Most people might walk out there and just totally freak out and think, I've lost it. Like, I just as well get rid of this problem and start over. And a lot of people might be tempted to spray. Don't do it. Be patient. What looks like a problem here could end up turning into a fantastic planting. So you just got to be patient and resist some of them urges to take care of the problem right away. Here's a picture of the example of the smothering effect. A bunch of sweet clover growing here, and you can see where the mower come along, a rotary mower, and if you've got, say, 3-4 inch seedlings growing underneath of here, it's not going to take too long. They're going to die. They're just going to be smothered out by that material. So that's why we want to cut if we're looking at 6 to 12 inch mowing height, you know, we might want to just be taking off 6 to 8 inches at a time, just so we don't have that smothering effect. This is probably a no-no. This was a sickle bar that went down and just totally dropped this stuff, you know, and we didn't come back and we didn't rake it, didn't bale it, anything like that. This is totally going to smother your stuff out. So when you go to mow, look at something like a rotary mower, flail mower, not a sickle bar or like a disc mower where you're going to be laying it down. The timing of the mowing. So this is a picture of one of our grass plantings. I took this picture just, I believe, a day or two before we actually mowed it. This is the same area. So this is what we're looking at. You can see the height of a lot of the material here. It's not super high. Some people might even consider, do I even need to mow this yet? But there were other areas that were a little bit taller. But you can see now after we've mowed, we don't have a lot of material laying on top of the ground. And we've got some of this exposure going on where these little seedlings can catch sunlight here to to keep growing. Establishment can vary within the same planting. This is the same, both these pictures, same area. This is about a 30-acre tract. And this is the same picture before here where we're mowing up on a hillside, and just to the south of it, we had this down in one of the lower bottom areas. Do we really need to do anything with that? That's looking pretty good as far as I'm concerned. If I'm looking in there, I can see a bunch of our forbs coming, flowering, a little bit of the grass is starting to establish, so maybe we don't even have to mow that area. Let's just let that go. Year two, a lot of the times you'll see here your native plants will start becoming taller. They're a little more lush. You can see the warm seasons here, just larger plants than those seedlings. Typically you can start mowing a little bit higher, maybe more in that foot range. It just all kind of depends on the pressure. Again, mow when vegetation is dry, mow when it before it's too tall, and just continue to monitor that these plants are still getting their sunlight. Just a picture of kind of what a mowing height here. Roughly, I'm guessing that this mower is probably set somewhere in that 12 to 18 inch height. And you can see where these blades here are cutting this nice and smooth. There's not a lot of tearing, but you can see, obviously looks like pigweed down in here, but none of these plants down here are getting touched. But if a lot of this stuff was higher, and say these were some native seedlings, you can see that now after a mower goes by, these are going to catch a lot more sunlight versus being if this material was a lot taller and shading things out. So just kind of a picture of depicting what that, taking that layer off, how much exposure this has now. Year three, your native plants become more robust. You should start seeing more flowering plants out there. You may only need to do some spot mowing here, and these would be on bad weed areas. Don't spray, although, we've kind of talked back and forth, and I think I got it further in here. If you have some problem species, which I'll come across, maybe do a little bit of spraying, but if you've got a lot of your native component that's in the mix of those weed areas, continue to just mow them and give those natives a chance to outcompete your weed pressure. At this point, your native plant community should start taking over the planting. You can see here we've got all kinds of forbs that are growing. You can see the grasses back in here, and this planting is going to do a very good job of competing against the things that we don't want. So they're going to start filling those voids and those niches, and this native planting is going to outcompete the things that we don't want, such as Canada thistle. Establishment realities. Just expect a weedy mess. Don't expect to plant something and have this beautiful picture of flowering things going the first year and deer running and pheasants flying. You're gonna have a weedy mess. Just expect that. Know what you're looking for. That's key, especially at this early establishment phase, and knowing whether your planting is failing or if it's coming along. I don't have it in my slide here, but Joe sent me a text here that's called, I know you guys can't see it, but it's called Prairie Seedling and Seeding Evaluation Guide, and it's just a little booklet is what it is. But that would be something like that, a little pocketbook that could give you a guide of what your small seedlings are going to look like. Because if you're going out there and you want to know if your planting's failing, or if things are growing, how are you going to justify that if you don't even know what you're looking at? And a lot of them little seedlings that are this big, to the average eye, it's just like, I don't know, is that just another weed? But it's actually one of your native plants that are growing out there. So know what you're looking for. Continue to go back and follow up. It's just you don't walk out there after, the first year and 3 months into the planting and I don't see anything, and you're like, well, it's failure. You're going to want to go back and follow up and continue to monitor your planting and watch it establish. This is key. It's probably the hardest thing to do, but it's the most important, and that's just be patient. Be patient, be patient, be patient. These things don't mature overnight. So you've got to have the patience, and sometimes that's the hardest thing. And we've been doing this for quite some time, and it's still one of the hardest things to do, is just to be patient, because you want to see results right away. Another thing is no two plantings will ever be the same. Doesn't matter if you do the same thing, doesn't matter if you have the same weather, no two plantings will ever be the same. So this is just the picture right here on one of our areas. This was kind of a no mow type deal. And in the end of this game, most of it, I mean, it all kind of looked the same, whether we mowed, whether we didn't mow. As you can see, here's another one of those issues where we have the mare's tail, but didn't seem to cause an issue at the end. Some more of the realities, and it's just be patient, and when you want to start over or when you want to just have the co-op come in and spray it out, be patient. Like I said, these things take time, so just be patient. Now we'll jump into kind of the establishment phase, so generally we're talking year 4 and beyond. Continue to monitor, get to know what you're looking at, know the difference between what you do want and what you don't want. Again, if you don't have an idea and everything just looks the same, how do you know if your planting is successful or not? Small infestation spot spraying, I believe Owen or somebody was talking about this earlier. If you've got some of these problems, like crown vetch up here, wild carrot, you got some of the wild parsnip and Sicer milk vetch is what we're kind of seeing in some of our areas. If you, and this is another important reason why you need to know what you're looking at, if you see these things starting to pop up in your planting, hit them right away with a herbicide, because a lot of times it's not going to be a large area if you are monitoring and find them. But if you can get on top of them and just spray them directly and get control of them before they start seeding out and wildlife starts to disperse and seed, and then pretty soon you got a mess on your hands. So if you can get on top of this stuff right away, it's going to help you out in the long run. If you don't know, don't guess. Find somebody who knows what they're looking at and can help you. You know, reach out. There's all kinds of people in this room. Reach out to offices across the state. If you want to know if your planting's starting to come along and you don't know what you're looking at, find somebody that does. What are your options for continued management? Burning, using cattle to graze it, maybe some haying. This picture is maybe we just leave it idle. Maybe we're not going to do anything with it for a while. But these are just kind of some options that you might have. Prescribed fire. This is a picture of an area that we had planted in 2013. We mowed it in 14 and 16. I believe in 16 it was hayed off, more so for just a Canada thistle issue. And then we had planned to burn in 2021, 22, and 23, but conditions just didn't allow us to get it done, and we had COVID in there and all that jazz. Finally burned it in 2024. So you can see this on April 4th. You see a bunch of little cedars coming in here, and you see a pretty well brome-dominated landscape. You see some dotted warm seasons in here. Burned it, and this is what that same planting looked like July 31st of that same year. You can see the forb diversity out here. You can see the warm season components, and we also got very good control on our cedars. So fire is a good way to kind of restart your planting. Also, obviously, a good tool to use if you've got some cedar issues too. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of work involved in it with fire, especially on the private side. You know, getting the fire breaks, finding the people to help you, the water resources, and stuff like that. But it is an option for you. Grazing, using cattle to establish these plantings and continue to help them flourish. You know, maybe one of the questions is what is your objective? Did you actually plant this planting for grazing? You know, maybe you don't even have high diversity out there. Maybe it's a cool season dominant. You want it as an early pasture, or it's a warm season dominant, and you're going to use it as a summer pasture. Or maybe you have a high diverse planting that you just want to, you want to use it in your grazing. So, but just kind of, you need to ask yourself, what's the objective as we're using our grazing source, Usually, generally, you want to hold off until, I put year 5 or later. The biggest thing is you want to make sure that these plants, with a new seeding, that these plants have got their root systems down in there. We don't want to graze it too early to where maybe some of these cattle, if they're going in there nipping, grabbing something, maybe they would, if it's a 2-year seedling, possibly rip, do more damage than good when it comes to grazing. So you just want to make sure that things are established well and these plants got a good root system to them. Obviously, think about your duration and intensity. High intensity for a short duration, you're going to do less damage than less intensity for a long duration. If you've got 100 cows on a little spot for 2 days, and then you move them versus, if you got 10 cows out there, but you got them out there for 120 days, you're going to do more damage. And that's another deal if, you get in with the grazing school and kind of learn a little more about that. But haying, we mentioned a little bit of this earlier. This is a good tool when maybe fire isn't an option, or this area here is close to Lake Cochrane. It's kind of a tough area to burn just because of all the houses, and there's more developed around us. And you can see in the background here we have a major ash problem here. Hard to get fire on it, so it's like, well, how are we going to manage this, especially all these ash trees that continue to come? So got a guy that's gone in here, and he actually hayed this planting the first 3 years, I believe, because the brome grass was coming back too, and Owen alluded to this a little bit earlier. We were having him coming in there doing an early hay on here. So he was coming in usually that June 1st period. Coming in, the brome grass was about at, about boots, just about putting a seed head on. Coming in there, we're haying it off, and then we're taking care of the ash trees in the back, the little saplings that are coming up about this. Making sure we're getting them out of there, but at the same time then we pull that brome grass off right when these warm seasons are starting to really take off, and you can kind of see we're getting a pretty good native grass stand going there by doing that early haying. Your haying, your timing depends on your goals. If you're trying to establish a planting that's got a lot of warm seasons in it, and you're battling the cool season exotics, that's when you're going to kind of want to do that earlier haying and give those warm seasons a chance to flourish. Another thing that we've done with some plantings that have basically kind of gone downhill, and it seems like they've reached their life cycle, is we've gone in with some late summer, early fall, and do a hay and then do a fall Roundup application on it to suppress those cool seasons. A lot of time Kentucky blue, smooth brome, and then that next year you see a pretty good flush of the warm seasons. We've also done some haying to try to do some Canada thistle control. We've got an area out by Long Lake west of Watertown where part of the planting we've been doing fire on, and then another little 5-acre chunk or so we've been haying the thistle at bud stage. And we've had success on some areas, and some areas we haven't. So, there's why it works one time and why it doesn't work the next. That's a good question. It's $1 million question, but it is one of those tools where if you do have a serious problem and you want an option out there, maybe that's something you can look at doing, is haying that Canada thistle at bud stage. Fertilizing. Pete wanted me to touch on this a little bit, and I kind of was just like, no, just don't fertilize. Easy enough answer, type deal. But I don't know a ton about fertilizing. Pete would know a lot more on it. But when we think about it on grasslands, they're complex. We've got both native cool and warm season grasses. We've got both exotic cool and warm season grasses, generally speaking. We've got native and exotic forbs. We got woody vegetation, complex soils. It's a whole, so it's this really busy thing going on here. And a lot of these plants, especially our natives, they're tough. They didn't establish on this native prairie because they were weak, so they can kind of hold their own, and they don't need the fertilizer to grow, essentially. So kind of the response, your objective, obviously, if you want to fertilize, what's your main objective? You want to produce more, right? We're looking for more forage pounds per acre. whatever it may be. But a high diversity native grass stand builds a resilient grassland, right? You know, a lot of these species can take care of themselves, and they can, once we have this established, they can fight pretty good against a lot of these exotics that are trying to come in. Nitrogen is your primary fertilizer. One thing that's guaranteed is, yes, fertilizing will alter the plant community and decrease your species richness. You know, that fertilizer is going to actually give those exotics a chance to get that kickstart and get ahead of a lot of your native plants. You know, so you're doing yourself more harm than you are good. Yeah, I mean, it's money spent on diversity is now going down the drain. So you've just invested, let's say, you know, $250 an acre on your native planting, and now you decide you're not only spending more money on fertilizer, but in the end you're actually decreasing your species richness in your planting. So, I mean, why even do it? You know, you're putting more money into something that you're degrading your planting. So, guarantee one thing: plant community can change and be expected, and exotics will end up dominating. So, I guess in the end, if you really want to, you can fertilize your lawn, but don't do it to your plantings. Just don't do it. And I guess if you really need to fertilize, you can wait till spring and you can have some snow geese show up. Any questions? Dan?
So I get your point on waiting till year 5 to use cattle for grazing, but there's some opportunity in there, and maybe you talk about that prior, maybe after year 2, to repeat the question. Yeah, to use cattle instead of mowing, and maybe you're completely against that. But
So you're talking about using cattle after year, say 2, to utilize them versus mowing?
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would assume what you're talking about, Dan, is you know, kind of doing maybe a high intensity, bring them in there, mow off what you would, or let them graze off what you're typically going to be mowing, get them out of there. Show us.
So really strategic and short term.
Yep.
And watch what they're doing. If they're pulling grass plants up by the roots.
Get them out of there. Yep. Yeah. So it's you know, so that's kind of one of those things. You know, Dan's saying, like, utilize what you got. You know, Dan's a rancher, got cattle. If you can utilize and utilize what's there and be productive towards your cattle, yeah. I mean, take your cattle in there for a high intensity, short duration, and do what the mower's going to do, but get some gain out of it. You know, but like Dan said, make sure you're monitoring that, because if they are going in there and starting to rip seedlings out, well, then we might be doing more damage than good. But yes, that's definitely an option.
All right, we'll hold other questions till the end of the session here. One thing that, especially for the producers in the audience, when you think about, Brett says, you know, it's going to take a couple of years to get your grass plants established, and I think a lot of the people that have done restorations would agree with that. And as a producer, that can be really hard to swallow when you think about cost and making a profit on your operation. And Dawn mentioned it yesterday, but a number of partners have been thinking about this for a few years at least, and Ducks Unlimited actually led a proposal here to help producers who are doing restorations in South Dakota. Audubon also has money in North Dakota if you happen to have funding up there or land up there, so that you can get those first couple of years, you can get a deferment payment and help make that new seeding cash flow. So for those who are thinking about it, you know, if I am a producer, when I think about 3 years of no income on what was cropland, that's a really hard thing to swallow. So but it is important, and that's why the partners have decided it was worth pursuing funding, because it really gives you a better product long term.